Hello, my name's Cliff Freilich. I'm the Executive Director of Cinema St. Louis, and we're the presenters of the 29th Annual Whitaker St. Louis International Film Festival. We are tremendously excited to host not just the local premiere, but the world premiere of Black Artists Group. It's a film that is long in the making and well overdue, I'd say, as far as acknowledging the important contributions to the Black Artists Group. The subhead is Creation Equals Movement, and I'm sure at a certain point that subtitle will be discussed a little bit. We are joined here by the director, Bryan Dematteis. Now I've screwed it up again. Bryan, say your name.
Bryan Dematteis.
Dematteis. We have subjects, Malinke Elliott, Oliver Lake, and George Sams. I mean, we're very excited to have three members of the Black Artists Group being represented here. And the person who's going to be handling the Q&A on our behalf is Chris King, who is the editor of the St. Louis American, although soon to be exiting that position. But nonetheless, he's been there for a long, long time, and I know has a deep and abiding interest in the Black Artists Group. So I'm now going to exit and turn things over to Chris.
First of all, I can't believe I'm looking at these faces on my computer screen. It's incredible. I wanted to start with a moment of silence for Lester and Julius and Hamlet and any others that we've lost. It was incredibly emotional for me to watch this movie. Lester in particular is someone that's who's not dead to me, and Hamlet. I never knew Julius, but Dr. Donald M. Suggs, the publisher of the American, that was one of his best friends. So if we could just together remember our lost brothers and think of them, I would like to start that way with you guys. Incredible to go through this movie. I didn't know, Oliver, that it was your trip to Chicago to see Lester, who already had all those things going on up there with the art ensemble and the Association for the Advancement of Creative Music. I didn't realize that was what spurred BAG. I guess I should have known that, but tell me about that trip to Chicago, and what did you see that Lester was doing that you wanted to bring back to your folks here in St. Louis?
Well, when I went to Chicago and saw that the AACM was a viable group and they were presenting themselves and had a school going and a group of well-established musicians who were highly organized, it made me want to do the same thing in St. Louis when I got back, because we were informally organized, so we needed to get organized formally. And when I came back, I suggested that we be a branch of the AACM. And I think Julia said, no, let's just do our own group, because we were then associated with actors, dancers, and visual artists. So he thought it would be better if we started our own group, and that's kind of how BAG was born.
Did you speak to Lester about it at the time, or did it percolate later? I mean, did you say to him at the time, I want to go back to St. Louis and do something like what you're doing? And what did he say that you remembered from that time?
No, I don't think I spoke to Lester about that. I might have mentioned it to Muhal in reference to that. Me wanting to be a branch of the AACM in St. Louis.
George, I appreciate you really worked hard to get this movie in front of the St. Louis American. I was in the middle of switching jobs and wasn't as proactive as you probably had expected, but I appreciate your effort on behalf of the film. And you had a producer role, I believe, as well as a creative role. So what was it like when you got to finally see the final cut of this thing?
Well, exhilarating, surprised, and I'm still surprised. It's taken so long. You know, we do have to evolve, and we have been evolving. And like you stated in the opening, there are so many of us that have gone on, and it's quite an acknowledgement that you placed there for us to give that silence to those that have fallen. I would say that definitely state that Charles Bobo Shaw was very instrumental in getting this moving, because he was the one that put Bryan in front of me. And so it's just been a wonderful journey, and we're still on this journey. We're still evolving, as it is.
And Malinke, it's wonderful to see you. I've heard your name for 30 years and never met you. And I know this movie being screened in St. Louis, like it's virtual, I suppose, but Oliver's, of course, an international name, and George is very known very well in St. Louis as a producer of the New Art series, and someone who's really, I think, doing as much as anyone to keep this kind of movie and music in front of the public. And everyone knows George for that. You're, I think, probably not as well known in St. Louis now as maybe you ought to be. So maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about your journey from BAG to where you are now, and let us know what you're up to.
Well, when I left BAG, I went to Europe and studied mime with Etienne Decroux in France, and went on to Sweden and worked, taught mime at the National Mime School there, Statens Mimskola. And we decentralized the school into the north of Sweden, which was underdeveloped culturally, and started what was called the Institute for Scenekonst. And Daryl Harris, Kai, our costume designer and also dancer in BAG, he came over to work with us, and also Portia Hunt and Julius Hemphill, right? And we did performances around Sweden for the National Concert Organization. It was called Rikskonserter. And when I came back, I moved to Oregon and taught at the university, taught movement for the stage and ethnic play production. And then went and worked, performed with the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And then did a lot of work with the Oregon Research Institute and the Oregon Center for Applied Science as a writing coordinator, writing video scripts and producing and directing video scripts, for different national organizations like the American Cancer Association, the Children's National Health Institute, CDC, and things like that. And now I've been retired for a number of years and just enjoying life. I've been working on a screenplay forever, which will probably never be produced, but it keeps me busy.
Well, I'd like to read that, if you're ever willing to share it with a fellow scribe. But thank you. Bryan, so I don't know your name before this movie, and I don't know what your connection is in St. Louis and BAG. So, kind of walk yourself into this scene for us. How did you come to be aware of this as a subject, and why did you pursue it for a film?
Sure. So I'm a St. Louis native, currently live in St. Louis, and I'm always looking for the stories that St. Louis has that really haven't been told or given the credit that they deserve or the light that they deserve. So being a record collector, and a filmmaker, I stumbled upon the BAG Live in Paris LP. And it was really through a web search way later than it should have been. We're talking, mid to late 2000s here. But I find, one of the top 10 influential jazz albums, free jazz albums of all time, or experimental albums of all time, Black Artist Group, Live in Paris. And when I saw that it was, a group of St. Louis musicians that were behind this album, I was really surprised that I hadn't heard of it before. That started this kind of journey into finding what I could online. And then I came across Ben Looker's book And when I saw that it went so much further than this album and so much further than the music, that there was a political aspect and that we had this collective that was taking on issues of social injustice. And, they had created a school on Washington Avenue. It just opened things up to the point of I need to start reaching out and see if anybody's still here. And that's where, as George mentioned earlier, I got in contact with Charles Bobo Shaw. And a couple conversations later, he agreed to come over and we started rolling. This was early 2014. And he was our first interview that kind of introduced me to George, which led to, me getting in touch with Malinke, eventually Oliver. It kept growing and growing and growing. So it's been a 7-year process. And I think that this is where we are today.
And I want to make sure we mention Ajule as one of our fallen warriors in the Black Artist Group.
Thank you.
He's very important in the group.
So Oliver, I think of you as a teacher, as well as a composer, performer, artist, poet, all the things you do with your son, the legacy you've left with your sons and your record label. So what lesson can young players and creative artists in general, what lesson can they take from BAG and from this film that might spur them on to further their journey?
I think it's about being in charge of your own destiny, taking charge, and that's what Black Artist Group was doing. We were presenting ourselves and we were making our own reality. And I think that's what young artists have to do, have to take care of their careers themselves.
I definitely, that's, I think, the dominant message of the film, and it's really well stated. There's a element of that that's ironic, tragic maybe, and that's the role of funding. And I was going to ask George about that, because George is trying to keep new art alive, and he has to scrape for funds like everybody, like Sliff and everybody else. And I'm sure Malinke with his projects in Oregon, and Bryan had to fund this film. So this grant happens and BAG becomes institutionalized and BAG opens an office, and then the money goes away and BAG goes away, which is kind of one way to tell the story. What role do you see foundation funding playing in Black arts movements of today, George? And the funders that might watch this interview, what should they know so they can actually truly support Black artists rather than maybe manipulate them as your funders did, I think, in BAG to some extent?
They need not treat it as a style. Like red is in, green is out, stuff like that. They need to take it a lot more serious in that sense. And to remember that every culture has a heartbeat, has a language. When you go to the doctor, and a beat. When you go to the doctor, the first thing the doctor wants to do is hear your beat. Puts that stethoscope to your heart to hear your vibe. And a lot of what goes on this planet is still based upon one beat. And everybody can't get into that same rhythm. And if you do, you're dead. So, as Oliver stated, it's about being in control of your own destiny. And a lot of funding sources kind of lend themselves to that. Whether you know it or not, I was with the National Endowments for a couple of years, overseeing major institutions. And it would knock me out to fly into an airport. I got on my suit and tie, my briefcase, and see a guy standing there with a sign, George Sams. He may be somebody ahead of some corporation, but this black guy walks up, I'm George Sams, and he's got to take a double take. Yes, I went to public school. And then I went on from there. And so it's about getting those other beats. And of course, I was a grants director at the Regional Art Commission here in St. Louis. And we run into the same stuff. So to make a long story short, it's about realizing that there's a lot of slices to the pie, and there's a lot of different flavors of pie.
Awesome. So Malinke, as Bryan mentioned, we have this record of Bag Live in Paris. We don't have as much on record as I would like. There was more video than I was aware of. Watching the archival video in this movie was just incredibly emotional for me. I can't imagine what it was for you guys to see yourselves as young people. It was incredibly gratifying and emotional for me to see that. But you were one of the motive forces for the theater side of it. I mean, I guess the motor force for the theater side of it. So what can you tell us to bring alive more of that aspect of Bag that we can't see? I wish that all of those performances were on video, but bring alive a little bit for us verbally. What would we see if we were sitting down, say, for that first production of Blacks, or any of the other staged performances that you have in memory?
Well, you know, one of the things we talked about in terms of Bag, I think is remembered or has been known primarily as a music organization, but actually it was a total theater concept that we were working on. That's the exact phraseology we used, a total theater concept. And so if you came to a Bag performance, you might see anything from a scripted play, like something like Dorothy Ahmed's Clara's Old Man, dealing with incest, uh, or or you might see a performance like Poem for a Revolutionary Night, or The Blacks, you know, which was a full theatrical presentation with an orchestra, dancers, poets. Um, we were all over the place. Mime, you know, um, and it was funny because in trying to describe it, even after people saw our productions, they had a hard time trying to, you know, describe what it was we were doing. I remember we did a performance for the National Teachers Association or something, a convention in St. Louis, and the widow of W.C. Handy was there. And after the performance, we did a performance. Oliver gave me a fragment from the actress Pam Jones, who was part of the Negro Ensemble, and also later a bunch of Hollywood productions. It was just a little fragment, you know, a couple of paragraphs, and we turned it into a full-blown drama about violence in the schools. And she saw that performance, and typical of people's reaction to what they saw is, she came up to me and she said, "Oh, darling, I saw everything. I saw everything. Jacob Lynn, Balanchine." Um, people didn't know how to describe a lot of times what we were doing, you know? I mean, you know, you might interpret it as a dance drama. Some people said it's very operatic, you know, and that was part of our whole multidisciplinary approach, you know, ritualistic in some ways, tightly scripted. Everybody always wanted to see the script, you know, and my reaction was always, there's no script. You know, I mean, a lot of this stuff was never written down even before, after, or doing the whole production, you know. The approach was, in terms of the theater, the approach when we weren't working with an established playwright's material like Amiri Baraka or somebody, we were improvising based on themes, you know, and we worked things out, you know, and created, you know, scenarios and dialogue, you know, and movement, just based on certain themes. Yeah. You know, we had our own approach to working. I know I wrote a book about it called Black Theater Notebook. And if anybody ever got their hands on that, they could, it is a total explanation of what the Bag Theater was about.
Is that in print?
No, there are some copies there. Marty Ehrlich, St. Louis musician,
Sure.
right, who worked with Julius and Oliver and a bunch of people. Marty created, has been the curator of an archive at New York University of Julius Hemphill, in which there's a lot of material about Bag in there. And that's part of the archive, is that book, Black Theater Notebook.
Well, let's work on reprinting it.
Well,
We got one copy in
we-
our
we
bookcase. That's it.
we got one copy in our bookcase, and
Well,
it's,
That's it.
yeah,
Well, let's revisit that. That book should be in print.
right.
So Bryan, I mean, in St. Louis, we are very possessive of our treasures. We tend to lose them to New York, Oliver Lake, but we still love our treasures. And Bag is, for a couple generations of people, you know, we walk around with Bag's like one of our bodily organs. You know, I mean, I like there's something inside my physical body that's the Black Artist Group, and what, you know, people will want to know what else is coming for this film. What other plans do you have for it? And will you make a copy that people can buy and that sort of thing?
So right now, I mean, we are submitting to film festivals, and that's kind of where we're starting. And as we kind of were talking about budgets and funding before, there was no budget or funding for this project. And so our hopes is that, you know, eventually we can see some sort of distribution. And, you know, if we go the PBS route, I don't know. I mean, I really want to see it live beyond festivals and end up, you know, available to anyone that wants to dig into this. And I think speaking with Cliff and this kind of, you know, he put the pressure on and said, hey, let's do this. Let's just make it happen. I've been so focused on this right now that I haven't been able to give it much thought. So I think we're starting here with this festival, and then we're going to kind of see what happens and hope that we have somebody reach out and say, hey, we'd like to help you get this into the hands of anybody that wants to see it. Because I think it is such a big story that, you know, it affects much more than just St. Louis. So I don't know where it's going to go. I hope it goes far.
Well, one person that's probably on all of our minds all the time is Quincy Troop. He's someone who's incredibly well leveraged and networked. If you need an introduction to Quincy, I'd be happy to make it. He would have ideas for us.
Be great.
And Oliver, so Julius's name has come up several times. You know, Lester's the one I'm still trying to live down, but Julius left this huge hole in the world, in all these people's hearts. And you got to play with him for so long, you know, and I mean, probably every musician that knows Julius's work is just kind of jealous of you for that alone. Yeah, I mean, I think he was one of the great creators of 20th century music, and I mean, probably properly recognized for his greatness, I would say. And I would just love to hear you talk at any length, at any level of detail about working with Julius and what a composer and what a presence he was.
Julius was a wild and crazy guy. And musically, he was a genius. On the stage, he was a genius. In composition, he was a genius. And he was a delight to be around, a great conversationalist, even though he had his own style of conversation. But he was an inspiration to me, definitely, and to many musicians, and continues to be a great inspiration to musicians who are checking him out now. And there's going to be a 7 CD bundle of Julius's concerts going to be released. I don't remember what label, but Marty Ehrlich, that Malinke was speaking about, has helped put together some tapes of live concerts that are going to be released in 7 CD set. So his influence goes on and on. He was a very powerful and wonderful friend and player.
Can I interject something here about the bag music?
Sure.
Musicians? Yeah, well, in my estimation, my humble estimation, in bag, we had 3 of the greatest composers in 20th century, from mid 20th century coming forward, music. It was Julius Hemphill, Bakita Carroll, and Oliver Lake. You know, Ornette Coleman made a statement. He said, in jazz, there are some guys who are players, and then there are some guys who are musicians. And, you know, these guys were musicians. I always felt that they were 3 of the greatest composers of mid 20th century music, unparalleled. I make no bones about it. The music that these guys created was unbelievable, unparalleled. I mean, people still haven't caught up to it. You know what I mean? And they were all over the map with it. You know, they were all, from the saxophone quartet, string quartet, all kinds of stuff they were doing. And like I say, Oliver, Bakita, Julius, they were the big 3 in, you know, they were it. You
And
know,
blew
nobody,
it.
huh?
And blew it.
Nobody else, yeah, blew it, you know. Blewett was more of a player. Blewett, I'm talking about not only being a great player, but composers. These guys, those 3 guys, I mean, the music, it inspired me, and it inspired our theater. It inspired our group, you know. It was, our foundation was their music.
Yes. You know, George, again, you also, I'm jealous of you for running with these guys. And I'm always thinking about these people we lost, you know. I'm still getting over Lester, Blewett. You know, what can you tell us about being young and running with these people that there aren't with us anymore? The Julius Hemphill, Hammett Blewett. I mean, Jesus. I mean, these are just, to me, epic figures. Even though I knew some of them personally, they still are like giants in my mind and my memory. And give us some snapshots of any of these legends that we've lost.
Well, what comes to mind is I was just turning 16, I believe, and we were meeting at this guy Maurice King's house. They called him Malik, and Oliver was at school at Lincoln. Floyd had just got out of the war, Floyd LaFleur, and they used to come by on Friday nights out here on the 5600 block of Chamberlain. We call it the Harry Hut because we all had these big froze during the day. Right? This had to be about 66, 67. And Oliver and Floyd would come by on Fridays and we would play until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, just wailing. people like John Norman would come through. Julius was just getting here, setting up kind of permanent residence here at the time because I think he was just leaving Lincoln at the same time, Lincoln University, that is. And I did, and John Norman, saxophone player, that was a part of that Friday, Saturday night group, and then also blew it. And so I was just a youngster, and I had a Polaroid camera, and I got pictures today. And I would take these photos, you know, because the Polaroids, you know, you just pull it out, and you set it aside, and so forth, and you know, automatic developing.
And you have those today?
I do.
I'll be right over.
And so from that, people just evolved into their various parts of life. You know, these guys were like Julius and Oliver, Floyd. They were married. They had children coming, and there might have been some children even existing at the point. But like I said, I was just turning 16, and even though I had played trumpet in high school, but it was just something I could do. Like some guys can play basketball, I can play trumpet. And so I did my first jazz gig with Oliver. I think I was still 16 at the Sheldon, and I didn't really know what that was about, other than, you know, play some music. And there was this guy around here named Thurman Thomas. A few years later, I would work rhythm and blues gigs with him over in East St. Louis. And even later, even with John Norman and Eddie Fisher, I worked with John with Eddie. And so Julius was one of the first guys that I actually saw that could play something and then go write it down. You know, and even experiences that I got with Julius on the West Coast, because we would hang out a lot when we'd come to visit his aunt, because I was living in San Francisco, Oakland at the time. And even being in New York in the 70s and hanging out with Oliver, I mean, it was kind of like a family that was always there. We always maintained a certain level of camaraderie. I don't think they really took me that serious because I was a youngster kind of just hanging out, but I wasn't a gopher. I always had something to contribute and something to do. And so, but nevertheless, Lester Bowie, quite an inspiration. And then but these think tanks were happening all over the country. It was going on in Detroit. It was going on, Horace Tapscott had it going on down in Los Angeles. And so these black think tanks of artists were going on, the musicians were doing for themselves. I mean, that was the word of the day in the 60s. I think we used to pick up a thing that said be and be, do and do. And so, you know, being in charge of your own destiny is such a profound statement that Oliver just always reminds us about, because you have to do for yourself. And you, particularly when you become a parent, you know, it's no doubt, you know, that is in the forefront of your mind. It's no longer about you, it's about those children. But that's doing for yourself, because that's a reflection of you. And so all I have is joy about the memories that I've shared with Vincent Terrell, being in one of his plays out at Washington University, laying up in a coffin. He put us in a coffin. I played Medgar Evers. And they closed that coffin down on me, man. And it was funny, because Bobo was also in a coffin. I think he played Malcolm X, and I think this guy named Johnny Johnson played Martin Luther King. And it was one of Vincent Terrell's play. And we didn't know what we were doing, man. I mean, we was youngsters. We was excited. We was glad to be around these professionals. And I remember hanging out with Oliver and Julius. They was playing in a blues club down on the street called Gano, down on Lower Grand on the other side of the highway. And we would go hang out with them on Friday nights. And they kept would be wailing this rhythm and blues stuff. So it was about music. It was about musicianship. It was about sharing, having a good time, because these guys are like our big brothers, and they still are, you know. And so, I mean, I can go on for hours. I don't think we brought our lunch or our dinner for this meeting, but nevertheless, I mean, it keeps me reaching every day. I mean, along with other people that I've come to know, like Andrew Hill, who was the the pianist composer who was a big inspiration in getting me to start the New Art series out in San Francisco. So, I mean, these thoughts have been lodged in our community. That's the only community I know. And that's where I got all of my data, is from my community. And they brought me to where I am today. And so, and I have nothing but joy.
Did Lester ever talk to you about playing trumpet? Did he ever give you any lessons, as it were?
Yeah, I did. I actually worked some gigs with Lester out in Oakland. Lester actually, I mean, he could read his ass off. Ooh, wow. This guy, I mean, he just put it in front of him, he would just pop this music. And we would go over charts, Lester, and also David Hines was another inspiration, because he was a trumpet virtuoso. Even though I did teach him how to play Dogon AD, because Jesus had wrote that in 11:16, and I had been playing it, and David started going over it one day, and he was playing it the way it was written, and I said, nope, this is Julius's music. And so, but you had people like him, Roswell Darby, Willie Thompson. I mean, I can go on and on and on of the musicians that come up in this community. And a lot of them had connections to the drum and bugle corps that was here, which was Town Hall Post 77. That a lot of musicians got their start in. Jerome Harris, Scrooge, the drummer.
Scrooge,
So,
yeah.
you know, that was a foundation in this community, which I have been trying to get back out there, because this summer, or last summer, I ran a children's orchestra program for the Parks and Recs department, teaching kids how to play instruments. And I'm talking about all of the instruments. And I had an illustrious staff of ex-retired city public school music teachers, retired. And also they had backgrounds in the drum and bugle corps. So it still lives, but it's just a thing of the arts are always looked at as not valuable, even though the tables that we eat our food off of is art. The chairs we sit in, it's art. So it's about, you know, where's the penetration, where's the concentration, where's the focus? I mean, like, how useful is it? But as I stated, everybody's got a beat.
Did you guys ever play with Joe Charles?
Oh God.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yes,
I just recently found a tape that I had transferred, and it happened to be a concert of Joe Charles and Jimmy Sherrod. And it sounded beautiful.
I want to hear that.
Can I say something about Joe Charles?
Of course, please.
I had heard so much about Joe Charles, and on our Sunday night concert series, he was featured, you know, with one of the groups, and I was just blown away. You know, I mean, you know, we had great drummers. We had great drummers. Jerome Harris, right? The 18 drum hands of Jerome Harris, right? But Joe Charles, they were playing and the music got so intense and it was building. I thought the building was going to explode. And the crazy thing about it, when they hit the crescendo, the last crash, Joe Charles hit those drums so hard, he busted the drum set. The bass drum started rolling across the floor. The cymbals collapsed. It was totally crazy. I'd never seen anything like that. I couldn't catch my breath. The drum set just exploded. His last crash, bam! It was like, and my reaction was, damn. You know, damn. You know,
Charles used to
that was Joe Charles.
He would practice against the wall. He would place his drums in the wall, put the bass drum right up to the wall, and that's the way he practiced.
I used to play with some guys that played with Joe, and I can fact check this story with this group. Is this true or false? John Coltrane came through St. Louis and saw Joe Charles play drums before he ever hired Elvin Jones, and he asked him to come with him. And Joe said, "I'm happy in St. Louis." And then John Coltrane met Elvin Jones. If Joe Charles had been willing to leave St. Louis, he would have been in the drum chair for John Coltrane. Is that true or false?
I had heard that story one time, but if anybody could answer that, would be Georgie Martinez.
Okay.
Because he was a producer during that period of time back in the late 50s, early 60s, because he did have a club in Gaslight Square, and he had something to do with the stuff there on Delmar at Belt, where John Coltrane, I believe, first appeared. But it must be something to it because I heard that story.
See?
I've never heard that story.
You know, I heard that story.
Never heard that one?
No, I never heard it.
But if you can find Jorge Martinez, if he's still around, he's got to be in his 90s now, if he's still alive. He can answer that for you and give you a definitive for it.
I have to tell, I want to tell a quick story. I've been thinking this since I saw the movie last night with Lester. I was in my early 20s and I was teaching college at WashU and doing pretty well, but I was in a band and I had a chance to go on a national tour, and I was undecided. I'd have to leave in the middle of the semester, including leaving a teaching responsibility, which is sort of burning a bridge. And I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to play music. And remember when Joanne Collins was running Jazz St. Louis? And I was her bartender. So she took me to Chicago on a jazz train trip, and Lester was the featured artist. And Lester loved Joanne, and he gave her the entire weekend. And I was his, George mentioned being a gopher. I was Lester's gopher. I carried his water. I literally, like, whatever Lester needed, I served him. And this was on my mind, and Lester was a good listener and he was interested in other people. So he got me talking. I was going through this dilemma, and he finally says, "Well, what are you? Are you a college professor or are you a musician?" I says, "Well, I'm both." And I kept talking. And then he said this, and I don't know why this seemed like the answer to all my problems, but he said, "You can be an outlaw and a college professor. You can be an outlaw and a musician. You can be an outlaw and be anything you want to be." And to me, what he said was, "You're a musician." That's not what he said. But I went back to St. Louis. I dropped all my classes. I went to my faculty advisor and said, "I'm quitting teaching." And I went on the road. But you can be an outlaw and be anything you want to be. Lester Bowie. So, what do you, I got you guys in front of me. I'm just going to ask some other questions. Like, what are you working on now, Oliver? I mean, you always have like sort of 10 things in the air. What's coming next from you?
Well, of course, things have slowed down because of COVID, but I've been painting, I've been writing. I started an orchestra piece about 4 years ago, and I got about the first third of it. So now I started back writing this full orchestra piece. And I recently rearranged some of my big band works. So between writing music and painting, I've been staying busy.
You know, the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra is trying to diversify a little bit its repertoire. We need to get that piece to them.
Well, when I finish it, I'll reach out to you for the contact.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help you. I love that string quartet piece you did a few years ago. That record you did, was it the Fluxus Quartet? Is that what
Yeah, Flux String Quartet.
Yeah, you hear that too, Malinke?
Huh?
Did you hear that record also?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm telling you, the three great composers, modern 20th century music, among the giants was Oliver Lake, Julius Hippill, Bakita Carroll. I mean, these gentlemen created music that, I'm a dilettante, in terms of music, but man, I mean, their music was very inspirational to me, and I got to a point where that was the only music I was listening to.
I never met Bakita or Julius, but they both are like real people in my brain, like people that I've known my whole life, because I've known Curtis Lyle, K. Curtis Lyle, my whole life. And, you can't talk to Curtis for 10 minutes without him saying the word Bakita and Julius. it's like he's always in conversation with these two people. And I think a lot of people don't know anything about Bakita Carroll. So anything any of you want to say to bring Bakita alive would be super helpful.
Yeah, well, just recently, Bakita received an award from a trumpet group called Font, F-O-N-T. And it was a online presentation, and it talked about his life's work. And a lot of his cohorts gave honors and dedications to Bakita, which were well deserved for a lot of the theater music that he's written, a lot of the jazz compositions that he's written, just his compositions in general. And this happened about a month ago, and it was a great awards ceremony for Bakita.
I would like to add that you need to get your lunch and just pull up his website.
Okay. Yeah, he's just totally like underappreciated, and I mean, everything we're talking about, like Malinke's book should be in print. Bag in Paris should be in print. Bakita Carroll's work should be known. I mean, we mentioned John Norman, Jimmy Sherrod. I mean, it's criminal, some of the talent from St. Louis that didn't leave St. Louis in particular, how poorly known some of this talent is. I mean, Jimmy Sherrod and John Norman, I grew up listening to their music because I was friends with their supporting musicians. Even Oliver Sane, you know, wasn't that well known outside of St. Louis because he never left St. Louis. I mean, he had a couple hits, but it's fascinating the way the people that are dedicated to St. Louis, the world never gets to know about them for the most part because the world doesn't really come to St. Louis anymore.
I tell you someone who blew me away, Richard Martin, guitar player.
Yeah.
I don't know him
Richard
at all.
Martin to me is the greatest guitar player I ever heard, man. I mean, Richard Martin was just unreal. I heard Julius one night. It was some little club, I don't know, out in nowhere. It was Richard Martin, Scrooge, Julius, and they started doing something, and Richard started playing a rhythm on the guitar. I'd never heard it. It was like, it was almost like he had an oud or something, you know? It's like the rhythm he was playing was like, I couldn't describe it. I never heard anything like that, you know?
Yeah, Richard was on one of the first recordings with the Black Artist Group.
Is that available? I mean, how can I hear it?
It might be online. He recorded, when I recorded the piece of mine called Africa. So if you Google Africa and the World Saxophone, and the Black Artist Group,
okay,
it may come up. But Richard Martin was on that recording.
Is he alive still, or?
No, he passed away a long time ago.
You know, Eugene B. Redmond just got republished the Henry Dumas book, Knees of a Natural Man. And Dumas came to East St. Louis about when you guys were all cooking. Did you guys get to meet Henry Dumas?
Yeah, I met him. This is a brilliant poet. I remember one line that it always stuck with me. It was like, when the savannah is dark and the verdure is green, the obe said, bathe me in blood, bathe me in blood. I am unclean, I am unclean. I mean, man, I read that and I said, holy cow, who is this guy? You know, who is this guy? I mean, there were people don't believe, I mean, people don't realize that period of time in St. Louis, there were giants. There were giants. You know, it's just amazing, the talent. You know.
Oliver, did you meet Henry Dumas?
No, I did not.
You know who I'm talking about though?
Yeah, I know who you're speaking of, but I never had the opportunity to meet him.
Yeah, I need to get you the book was just republished. Sorry, there's geese where I am. The book was just republished, Knees of a Natural Man, and I know you're a poet also. It's incredible. I mean, what Malinke just read, it's all just crazy great poetry.
Well, you know, in St. Louis at that time, the poets Eugene, Curtis, Dumas,
Quincy.
Arthur Brown.
Yeah, Arthur Brown.
Arthur Brown.
Arthur Brown.
You know,
Quincy.
it's just amazing. Ajule.
Yeah.
Ajule. I mean,
Talk about Ajule.
Vincent.
That's another name that people don't remember.
Well, Vincent Terrell, playwright, dramatist. I mean, they were giants. I mean, I used to tell people in Bag, and I don't think half of them believed me, but I was saying, hey man, this is world class. This is the real stuff. I was saying, I've been around. I've seen some stuff. This is right up there with anything and everything that I've ever seen. You know, I mean, you know, Michael Castro. I mean, I'm just, if you want to start talking about poetry in general, you know, I mean, even outside of Bag, you know, like Michael Castro. And these guys are incredible. The poetry, Shirley LaFleur. I mean, it was just great. It was really, really great.
And speaking of Ajule, I have, he inspired me when I deliver my poetry. I copy his style of delivery because it was so original and so inspirational. And I continue to keep his style alive through my poetry delivery, which is copied off of his delivery.
Yeah, K. Curtis Lyle of that group is the one that I'm under Curtis's spell. Did you try to get him on camera, Bryan?
I did, and we actually had an interview lined up right before the pandemic hit. So literally like a week before we were in contact and we were going to do the interview, and then everything closed down. And we're still, you know, trying to figure out what's safe with, you know, interaction, and it's made filmmaking in the process of interviewing people a little bit more difficult.
I mean, is there another version of this film you think that's longer, or is this your final cut, you think?
I mean, I have about probably 60 hours of interview footage. I've got a lot. There could be a longer version down the road. I think we're kind of doing the sequel right now. This feels like the sequel to the documentary, the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I knew, I mean, George brought in Oliver, who I'm in touch with anyway, and I can't believe I'm looking at his face on my computer. But Malinke, this is a real bonus. I'm freaking out, you know, that your face is on my computer screen. I've heard your name like for 30 years. I mean, 30 years. Curtis Law is like Malinke this, Bakaida this, because, you know, Julius that. You know, I mean, all you characters are like, I was a little like young white guy running around the loop with all you people in my head, you know. And here you are looking at me on my computer screen. What are you working on now, Malinke? You said you're retired, but I don't buy it really. What are you doing?
You're working on your screenplay. It's actually...
Yeah. I'm working on this screenplay. It's called Mojo.
Mojo?
It's, yeah, Mojo. It's one of the seminal African-American folk stories, you know, about High John the Conqueror.
Ah, okay.
You know,
bring it, man. I'm ready. I'm in.
Yeah, it's the first one.
I can give it
it's
to
the
Reggie
original.
Hudlin. Do you know
Yeah.
Reginald Hudlin? We could get it to Hudlin easy. We could get it to Reginald Hudlin. He'll read it. Do you know Reggie?
No, I don't know Reggie.
Yeah, well, he's
I'll
accessible.
I'll send you a copy.
I'll send it to Hudlin. I mean, Hudlin's one of these guys that some people leave St. Louis but never really leave. He never really left. He's very tuned in.
Well, my wife Lynn is sitting over in the corner. She's been the techie who hooked us up because of me and technology. You know, I mean, I left it with stage lighting. You know, I mean, like that's as far as I got. But like, she's been telling me. She said, "You got 2 screenplays there." You know, it's like, it's kind of massive, you know. Somebody's got to take it away from me. I keep working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll get it to Reginald Hudlin. You know, I mean, he's a mover and a player, and he loves St. Louis. He's an East St. Louis guy, you know.
Right. No, I never met him.
Okay, but you know who I'm talking about, right? The producer and director.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure he would read it.
Right. Okay.
So, speaking of East St. Louis, we haven't talked about Miles yet. So, I mean, like, what interactions, if any, did the Bag crowd have with Miles back in the day?
Well, when I was going to college, I used to date his daughter. And I was always asking her about the trip she would take home. She would go home for holiday. I would always want to know who visited her apartment in New York, because we was at Lincoln University together. And then later on, when we started the World Saxophone Quartet, we played opposite Miles several times, and we had some interaction with him. I had some personal interactions with him prior to that.
Do you remember anything he said?
Well, I auditioned for Miles when I moved to New York and his apartment. And I got to his door on 77th Street, and he had a sign on the door that said, "Do not ring my doorbell if you don't know me. Get away from this door. Don't come bother me." And I said, "Well, I can't ring the doorbell." But then he happened to come out, and then he invited me up, and I told him I was from St. Louis and I wanted to play in his band. And he put on a tape and had me play along with the tape. And he said, "Yeah, you can play." And then he proceeded to have a visitor and left me in the front room there. And I left. But then later on, I did see him, as I mentioned, playing opposite him with the World Saxophone Quartet.
Gregory, Miles' oldest son, is still available for conversation, and he lives in New York. He's on 71st Street on the west side, and he would be a person that, if you want to get some direct information on his dad and family, you know, while he's still around now. I think
Yeah.
He'll be 75, you know. So
You're in touch with him?
all the time. We talk at least once a month.
Yeah, hook me up, man.
Sure. We were kids together, and so, you know, we kind of ran around a little bit.
You know, we're talking about Eugene B. Redman a little bit. You know, he's got a book of poetry in print, memoirs. It's a good anthology. You guys were probably around when he released those great books like Songs from an Afrophone and Season of Rain and Desire. Those poems are in print again. Oliver, you ought to. Do you have a copy of Redman's book?
I have some copies. I'm not sure if I have that one.
Yeah. Have you ever you ever done any music to any of his poetry?
No, I haven't. No.
You ought to, you know, I mean, I'm commissioning you.
I see you giving me another project. Beautiful.
Yeah, you know, you don't have enough to do.
You know, a person that was very influential in Bag that never gets mentioned very much was head of our dance department, Georgia Collins. right?
Oh, yeah.
She originally came to St. Louis with Catherine Dunham, and then became involved in BAG, you know, and was head of the dance company. And that was another gem or jewel that we had, was the BAG dancers. They were incredible. What Georgia just kind of raised up dancers, young women that walked in and said, I want to dance. I want to learn how to dance. And Georgia would hook them up and start training people. And she was
What was the
very
style, Malinke? What was her style? What dance styles was she teaching?
Georgia knew all. Georgia was like an anthropologist of dance. She knew all the African dances. She knew all the traditions, you know. But the one thing that she was the first Black dancer with the New York City Ballet Company. So Georgia was very versatile, amazing, amazing. The breadth of her knowledge, you know, about theater, dance, like I said, anthropology. You know, Georgia was amazing. She knew all about Haitian traditions. She was totally amazing. Well, she came from an amazing family because her brother Rufus was part of the founding member of the San Francisco Mime Troupe, right? But like I say, Georgia was the first Black dancer with the New York City Ballet. But I mean, you only had to see the BAG dancers. They were utterly amazing. They were utterly amazing. And I've seen some great dance troupes, from Bill Jones to the Béjar Ballet. It's, they were, it was incredible. It was just incredible.
Like, how much video exists of BAG? What's the total? What's the total running time? Do we have like hours of it or minutes of it?
No, there's not a lot. There's not a lot. Primarily, what exists is what John Malaire has, you know, filmed. You know, the one of the things about BAG is, like, we sometimes got so elaborate in our productions that that's all we could do. You know what I mean? Like, we did not have the technical resources to record what we were doing. You know, we were just being very innovative. I mean, like, our our costume wardrobe was Goodwill and Vet Village. You know, me and Julius was known in there. We'd walk in and they'd say, "Oh, you boys are doing another play?" You know, I mean, we were doing everything on a shoestring because the grant money that existed wouldn't allow us to. It wasn't geared toward production.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Malinke, do you remember the Thurman who we brought in as a filmmaker, and he never produced one film?
Yeah. Me and Lynn was talking about that the other night. She said, you know, Thurman, I don't want to malign anybody, but we brought, under the grant, the Rockefeller Danforth grant, we were, it was structured that we would bring in 2 artists in residence. One of them was Emilio Cruz, a painter, right?
We
And
need to talk
Emilio
about.
came in and did a great job, did a phenomenal job. Even though me and him clashed all the time, I gotta acknowledge that he did a phenomenal job. Thurman, who was kind of a rascal, came in.
Walked out with.
Now my wife's she's coaching me over here. No, and I can't say that. But Thurman came in and just the projects that he was creating and working on did not involve Bag very much. He had his own agenda that he was working on, his own business. It's kind of like Donald Trump, And so we didn't get a lot of things recorded, We didn't get a lot of things recorded. It was crazy. Let me tell you a quick story. J.D. Paran used to berate me all the time. He'd say, hey man, what's wrong with you? He said, every week you got us doing a whole new production. He said, haven't you seen Broadway? He said, they do a Broadway show over 100, 200 times. He said, in Bag, we do a production. We do the most elaborate production. We do it one time. And we think that like, oh, it's been like a world premiere. Like we think that like, it's been seen by everybody. Oh, everybody's seen that one. We got to do something else. And he said, from week to week, like our Sunday concert series that used to go down on Sunday nights. I mean, it was crazy, our naivety. We were just producing and producing and producing, turning out work week after week after week. And like I say, every week we were doing something different, it was amazing. We never stopped to say, hey, let's do this and let's record it. We just didn't have the resources. We should have, but we picked the wrong artist to come help us with that. We made a mistake. He saw us coming.
Well, let's talk about Emilio though. I mean, I could sit still for Emilio Cruz stories all day long. I own one of his works of art. It's probably the most valuable work of art I own. And again, he's another name. I've never met him, but he's another name that's been in my head for 30 years. Like he's a living being, but I don't know anything about what you guys are going to tell me. So what was, I know he worked with the kids, and I mean the visual art in the movie is just incredible. What he was doing was, I mean, I think was a genius, but I don't know. What was he like to work with?
Impossible. He did a great job, but a classical temperamental visual artist, they're kind of a breed unto themselves, you know what I mean? People who work in what is considered the fine arts, Oliver Jackson, was another, Emmanuel Hughes. We had, again, we had these great artists, doing things. Oliver was designing sets for us.
Oliver Jackson designed sets for you?
Yeah, on a budget of $35, I mean, Oliver.
That's a genius right there. Oliver's a true genius.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Oliver Oliver would go to a department store and buy up all the saran wrap they had, and would come in and create a set that you would not believe. You know, it was just unreal. You know,
Sounds like he was before Christo with that rapping thing.
well, you know, if the way the old gaslight theater was constructed, you know, like theater in the round, and it had these pillars, and he just would make a box, a house, with saran wrap, and so that you could have multiple entrants. We could enter anywhere from anywhere in that configuration. So, you know, I mean, we could create all kinds of, with lighting, create all kinds of effects, you know, and it looked like we were just really this incredible technical production, you know, and it was just based on Oliver created this, basically this house, this room with saran wrap and lights.
Are there photographs of that? Or
Nothing.
video? Ah.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Now, I know it was largely an improvised troupe, but are there like extant scripts of plays? I mean, are there plays that could be performed again that we could see? Could there be like a bag theater festival today?
We didn't have any script for a lot of things, unless, you know, we did some scripted plays like Old Judge Moses is Dead, you know, or
The Blacks.
Claire's Old Man, you know, New England Winter, by the emerging playwrights of the times, the young Black playwrights. But in the main, our productions were things that we created, you know, and the theater and the dance and the musicians, like I said, music was the inspiration for what we were doing. And so we composed things in a lot of ways, the way jazz or improvising was our foundation. You know, like we were exercising in our training, you know, we were exercising to music way before the whole what is it, the aerobic thing happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Bag aerobics.
yeah, no, our warm up, we'd be warming up to Train or Albert Eiler, you know what I mean? Like, and people would come in and see us just warming up, and they would think it was some kind of production, you know? It was pretty crazy. You know?
Oliver, did you ever meet John Coltrane?
Yes,
No.
I did. Oh,
Did you ever meet him, Oliver?
yes, I did. I met him in St. Louis when he came through. I was a teenager. I was about 18 years old. And he was there for a week. And the one thing I do remember about meeting him, I went to his set and I said, I'm going to speak to him when he finished playing the first set. But he came off the stage, went in the corner and practiced until time to go up for the second set. So I stayed for the second set. I said, I'll speak to him when he comes off for the second set. He left the stage, went in the corner, practiced again to the third set. So I waited for the third set. And then I finally got a chance to speak to him after that. But
what did he say?
Oh, I asked for a lesson. and it happened to be a Saturday night. And he said, on Sunday, I don't do anything. I don't see anyone on Sunday. And that was it.
That was probably the time that he saw, would he have seen Joe Charles play on that visit to St. Louis?
It's possible. I don't know for sure. But Philip Wilson sat in with him that week.
Was he working with Elvin Jones by then?
Yes, Elvin Jones, but Elvin Jones didn't make a couple of nights, and a couple of nights Philip Wilson sat in with him.
Then he saw Joe before then, if the Joe Charles story is true.
It's possible, but I don't know anything about that.
Another quick story here, since you guys got me started.
Keep going. I got a beer.
I booked the Bag Big Band into Forest Park Junior College on a Friday night as a warm-up act for I forget who it was. It was a guy it was a group that came in and they had a big hit, you know. I forget who the featured actor was, you know. They were nationally known, and they were, you know, they had a big hit, and it was a real kind of rhythm and blues groove kind of thing, you know what I mean, kind of group. And so we came back, we showed up, the big band showed up, Blewett and everybody, Oliver, everybody, Vincent Terrell on cello, the whole big band. And all these students, they were, you know, they were used to some boogie woogie, some, you know, I mean, let's get down, let's dance, let's shake our booty kind of stuff. And our band came out there and played the most abstract blues you ever want to hear in your life. I mean, it was out. It was totally out, you know. I mean, it was great music, but it wasn't what these kids were expecting, right? And our band played, and then we left the stage, and there was this grumbling in the audience, you know, like, oh man, what are these guys playing? What is this shit, man? Blah, 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 blah. I can't dance to that, all this kind of stuff. Albert King, his band was after us, right? He was standing there in the wings, getting ready to go on. And here's this crowd of these students who did not appreciate what we had just done, what our band had just done. And as the band was going off, I walked over to Albert King and I said, Mr. King, what did you think of our band? And he looked at him, he said, you did it, baby, blues them, baby, blues them. He was the only one that got it.
Well, Albert King, I mean.
He was the only one that got it. It was like, it was abstract blues. It was an abstract, you know, he said, you did it, baby. You got them. Blues them, baby, blues them.
I would like to have heard the Albert King World Saxophone Quartet collaboration.
Right, that would have been something. That would have been something.
I keep
now,
hearing
the one that got it. The producers who produced this, you know, they didn't want us to come back. You know what I mean? But Albert King got it. He got it.
I keep hearing the phrase rhythm and blues, and I have to just, since I have Oliver Lake on my computer screen somehow today, I have to say that like Rhythm and Blues by the World Saxophone Quartet is like one of the 10 greatest records that anybody ever made, ever, under any circumstance. And that version of Sitting on the Dock of a Bay, I mean, who in the hell picked that tune? And what was it like arranging? And this is not a bad question, but what was it like arranging that tune? I mean, you have to understand that is one of the greatest performances in the history of music, and you're on the damn thing. I mean, who picked the tune, and what was it like arranging that fucking tune?
I picked the tune because we were doing a rhythm and blues as our theme, and I just wanted to be true to the original, but I knew that each one of us were blues players from our soul, and that it would work out if we did our arrangement, my arrangement of that piece.
So that's your arrangement.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, that song's in my head that performance is in my head like every day of my life.
Wow.
The way it comes in. Who plays the first couple bars? Is that you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to listen to it. I haven't listened.
Oh God.
To it in a long time.
It's just incredible. And is that all charted out, or how much of that is improvised versus charted?
The melody is charted out, but the improvisation is improvised.
Is there still a version of the World Saxophone Quartet? I mean, I know everything's weird now with the pandemic, but I mean, I saw something.
No, after when Blewett passed away, that was our last performance.
That was it?
We did our last performance in Pittsburgh about 3 or 4 years ago.
Was that recorded?
Yes, it was. It was recorded by the producers of the concert. But
Was that released?
Not a commercial. It's not a commercial release.
Is it quality good enough to release?
I haven't heard it in a while. I think it probably would be.
Well, let's do it, man. Let's release it.
But it was
Seriously.
material that we have probably already recorded.
Yeah,
It
but the
wasn't
last
really-
performance of the World Saxophone Quartet, that should be released. You should release it to my email inbox, for example. Yeah, and now Blewett. Now, I mean, Malinke wouldn't put him in this top three, but you know that telepathic orchestra thing he was doing. I don't know if George was in St. Louis for that. I don't know if you guys might not have seen him do that, and he was doing it with kids. So it goes back to the bag stuff with the kids. I mean, I ran around with Blewett a little bit when he moved back to St. Louis. I mean, we hung out together a bit, and I went around with him and did stuff with him. And I mean, he would have an auditorium of kids, and he would have, youth musicians that could scarcely play. And he had these hand signals that it was guided improvisation, but they knew like what, I don't remember all of his hand signals, but they all meant something. He was making brilliant music with musicians that could, young black kids that could just barely play their instruments. And he would have these auditoriums of kids just spellbound. He was really going somewhere, I think. I think he was really creating pretty vibrantly up until he got sick.
Chris,
I think he counts as a composer too.
Chris, can I interject here?
Yes, sir.
He was also working with East St. Louis Lincoln High School big band, and those kids could play. And he was presenting a lot of his charted music with them. And there were some really good players. In fact, there's some players that are being featured at the Bistro these days. A little kid named, a little trumpet player and a saxophone player. The name is eluding me right now, but he did that at the gallery a couple of times. And those kids, they didn't understand totally about improvisation, but they could read. Those little kids from over there could read, and it was Eugene Redmond's nephew, I think, that was the assistant music director.
Delano?
Yeah, that was over the high school band. And I have to say one thing about East St. Louis Lincoln High School band, those kids, they have some strong musicianship for that age. For that age group of kids, they knew their instruments. They knew their instruments.
Those Lincoln kids could play. I went up to Edwardsville with him, and he took these kids in Edwardsville and taught them how to do this improvised thing in one afternoon. Sure. So yeah, the Lincoln kids could play. That reminds me of Ron Carter, not the bass player, but the teacher. Did you guys ever? You guys know Ron Carter, the guy that led the Lincoln band?
Sure. Yeah, I know him well.
I know.
Yeah. Is he still at Northern Illinois University?
Yeah.
I
think so.
He could be.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So one thing we haven't talked about is the politics of it. It's interesting that Bryan's movie was kind of started in 2014 before Ferguson, and then Ferguson happens, which changes a lot. and I think for the better. But I mean, did you ever request your FBI file and see what they have on you?
Yes,
You're
What do they
asking,
got on you?
yes, yes.
I mean, that's the wrong question. I mean, what was it like reading your FBI file?
Me and Ben Looker, we tried about 4 times to get my FBI file, and they said that I didn't exist. When I was in the military, I had a top secret security clearance because I was working with nuclear weapons. And
Was that before BAG or after?
before BAG.
Wow.
I was in between 60 and 64. And
Where were you stationed? I'm sorry to interrupt, but where were you stationed?
I was stationed in Topeka, Kansas at Forbes Air Force Base, and also the Menninger Foundation, the Psychiatric Foundation. I was working on a project with Dr. Margaret Mead, Dr. Carl Menninger, Dr. Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter.
You worked with Margaret Mead and Sigmund Freud's daughter?
Yeah, and Dr. Carl Menninger, the father of American psychiatry. We were working on a project called 35-9, the Red Triangle. It was the military had a physical screening program for people going into the missile program, missile technicians. They did not have a psychological profile, and that's what we were developing, because one of the problems was it costs about $140,000 to train entry-level missile technicians, right? And people were washing out of the programs. This was a silo program. People were washing out of that program, and they were trying to figure out, well, what kind of people, what kind of personalities could we recruit that where guys would be willing to go down under the earth and work on these silos, in this silo for 36 hours, just running simulation studies, exercises of firing a missile, you know, and who would press the button when we said press the button, you know. And guys kept saying, well, we don't mind being in the silo because we get out to walk around and maybe smoke a cigarette. Well, you couldn't have people walking around in military out in the middle of wheat field or Kansas or Texas, where all the missiles were located, right? They were all supposed to be top secret, right? So you couldn't have people coming in and out of those silos, right? So we were trying to develop a profile for what kind of personalities, what kind of kids. And what it finally came down to was something very simple, what Dr. Mead came up with. She said, well, why don't you recruit kids whose fathers were part of some kind of submarine service, or go to Western Pennsylvania and kids whose dads were miners, people whose concept is you go underground, you work, and you stay there until you finish your work and you come up. And that was, so the focus was recruiting kids from Western Pennsylvania, Kentucky, coal miner kids, right, into the missile program, you know, the silo program. And that's what I was doing. And so I had a, you know, top secret
That's
clearance.
fascinating, man. That's fascinating.
Well, now this is a crazy thing, and I'll wrap this up right quick. I was volunteering at a little convent down in St. Louis, down when white flight, everybody had left except this little collection of nuns. And they were doing a program working with the Black kids from the neighborhood, right? And so Russ Durgan recruited me to go down on Saturdays. He said, go down and start a theater program with these kids, man. You know, so I was down there, and every Saturday I'd go down, and it'd be me and the little sisters, and they were still wearing all the black habit and all this kind of stuff. And I was doing a walk through the neighborhood with the kids, trying to get them to look at their environment in a different way, in a new way, right? Pointing out different things. And we were one Saturday, so here I am, I'm at the head of the line. Here's all these about 20 little kids, about little fourth graders. Here's the sisters in the back, you know, with the heavy black habit and the whole bit, right? And here we are, you know, walking through the neighborhood, and the kids start saying, Malinke, why is those white men's over there taking your picture?
Yeah, that's right. That's in the movie.
Right. And so I look, and here's a guy leaning out, you know, and I think right away, oh, fucking FBI, man. So I go home, and as I'm going through the neighborhood, everybody's giving me a heads up. Say, brother, there's a bunch of white dudes in suits, man. They're in your crib. And I'm saying, yeah, I know, man. I know what's going down. Right. So everybody along the block is warning me, hey, brother, let me school you here. What's right? So I get there, and the guys, and they're saying, what happened to you? You used to be a good trooper, son. You know, you hooked up with these people. Well, I was involved with the peace movement out at Washington U. Right. And I had started the Peace Information Center over in U City, right? Leased the building, all that. I was working with Stop the War, right? I come in, and they, like I say, they say, well, what happened to you? You know, you involved with all these people. And this is, I'm not kidding. This is what they said. What was it? You know, was it the drugs, the sex, the rock and roll? And I thought, this is too absurd. I said, get out of my fucking apartment, man. I know my rights. Get the fuck out of here. You've already broken, you know, you've violated about at least 15 of my rights. Get the fuck out of my place. But they actually said, was it the sex, drugs, and rock and roll? So according to them, I never existed.
Incredible. Yeah, that part of the movie was really upsetting to me. It made me really pissed off.
That was that whole Contel probe out of the FBI.
And you guys were a target of it's amazing. You guys were a target. BAG was a target of COINTELPRO. That's amazing.
Yeah, Ben talks about it in the book, the BAG book. Ben Looker. We tried 4 times to get my file, and they said I didn't exist. And I went through, and I was honorably discharged. Received a accommodation medal for the 25-9 program, but I didn't exist. We don't know him. He didn't exist.
Incredible. if there's going to be a DVD of this movie at some point in time, there should be a companion of like all of the archival video uncut. Like, who has, how could we collect all of the video that exists? I mean, could we collect it?
Well, a lot of the work that I did with Julius is in the archive that Marty Ehrlich put together.
So I could get that from Marty?
I don't know. It's part of the archive, the Fales collection in New York University. John Malaire had filmed most of the theater stuff that exists. That John Malaire did that.
I don't know him. Is he still around, or?
Yeah, he's still around. He's in St. Louis.
Are you in touch with him, George?
No, but Donald Suggs has got some stuff, and Brent has some stuff. Brent is at Columbia, there in New York, and he's got stuff. Clement Can has stuff. Just to name a few.
Okay. Well, let's start, pulling it together. So did Bag ever, I'm like, this is like my fantasy, wish list of questions now. Did Bag ever come across Mingus or Oliver? Have you ever met Charles Mingus?
No, I didn't have the opportunity to meet him.
How about Charlie Parker?
No, I never met Charlie Parker either.
Blewett is a connection there with the Mingus, but
Yeah, I know. I
met Mingus.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, I met Mingus in Sweden, of all places. There's a jazz festival there called the Umeå Jazz Festival. And I was teaching at the Ballet Academy at the University of Stockholm in the theater studio, right? And so I found out that Charles Mingus was going to be appearing at the Umeå Jazz Festival, which was on the other side of the country in the middle of dead winter, right? So I packed them all up on a bus and took the bus across the mountains in a blizzard, right? My whole class, right? And so we got there early. And so we're in the theater up in the balcony, and I hear this baritone sax, and instantly it's like, that's Hamiet, right? So who is it? Here's Blewett. He's backing out on stage. He's doing a sound check. He's backing out on stage, and he's he's playing, right? And I said, I said to my kids, the minute I saw Blewett, I said, hey, come on, right? So we all head down and we go backstage, right? And hook up with Blewett and John Hicks, who was there with
John Hicks
or somebody, right? There's John. So we go in the dressing room and my kids are lining the walls and they're staring at Blewett. And like in Sweden, those kids knew more about jazz than American kids. Because Mingus, Duke, Louis Armstrong, they're in the textbooks. They're in the textbooks there, right? So my kids are all lined up against them and they're just in awe, right? And Mingus is sitting over there like Buddha, being totally oblivious. And Blewett said, say, Charles, this is Malinke. He was chairman of the Black Artists Group. He's a genius just like you.
Woo!
Right? This is Blewett, right?
Yeah.
And Mingus just looked up, looked at me for a second, said, yeah. And went back into his world, right?
think we'll just make that our punctuation. So let's wrap it up. But thank you all for your time. I mean, I've really had a blast, and I'll follow up with these various things, especially all the recordings I'm trying to get from Oliver Lake. But wonderful spending the afternoon with you, gentlemen. And Malinke, I'm so glad to meet you. I've heard your name for 30 years.
Right,
Great to
right.
see you, Malinke.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna go listen to the World Saxophone Quartet for the rest of the day. I'll see you in my dreams.
Okay,
Thanks for
guys.
making this movie, Bryan.
All right.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. It was
Bye.
good to connect.
Be in touch.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
One final tip. Oliver's Heavy Spirits album.
Okay.
Check that out.
All right. I will.
Check that out.
All right.
Okay.
I'll see you, man. Thank you.
All right.
See you, everyone.